saith Yahweh, and my servant whom I have chosen, that you may know and believe me, and understand that I am he. Before me there was no mighty one formed, neither shall there be after me. We're going to see some things as we go along. We want to tie that into what the same apostle, John, Brother Lucan, writes in his prophetic book, Revelation. In Revelation chapter 1 and verse 8. Now, of course, according to the modern translation, it reads, I am Alpha and Omega. For those of you who don't know, Alpha is the first Greek letter, Omega is the last Greek letter. Okay? What it should have read, I am Aleph and Tau, the first Hebrew letter and the last Hebrew letter. But why did he say that? Because see, in this particular passage of the book, it is Yahweh speaking. But he's speaking in another form, which we're going to get to. He says, I am Aleph and Tau, the beginning and the ending. We read that in Isaiah. So now what we see is what John is doing. He's mirroring a lot of what Isaiah touched on. In other words, that one line of thought within the prophetic line, the line of transmission. He says, saith Yahweh, which is, and which was, and which is to come, the Almighty. Okay, so now let's go back to John chapter 1, picking up in verse 2. And it's still elaborating on this word. It says, the same, regarding the word, the same was in the beginning with mighty one. Now the mighty one that's referred to is Yah. The same was in the beginning with Yah. In other words, now we have Yahweh accompanying Yah. Okay? All things, listen to that. We learned that in the first verse of Genesis. In the beginning, mighty ones created the heavens and the earth. We learned that. So now, he's only co-signing what was already established. But he's elaborating in the sense of now helping us to understand who it was that walked before us. So let's move on. All things were made by him. He's talking about the word. And we already know that Yahweh Elohim created the heavens and the earth. And without him was not anything made that was made. Think about that. So let's continue. Let's go down to verse 10. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. He came unto his own. Who are his own? His people. He came unto his own. Who are his people? Israel. And his own received him not. Remember, the stone that the builders refused. Remember how they lightly esteemed the rock of their salvation. Remember. Let's move down to verse 14. And the Word was made flesh. You hear that? Yahweh Elohim was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. Now, let's explain something. When it says that he is the only begotten of the Father, this is where we have to understand. Yah, the Father, created one thing, or if you would like, 22 things. But that one entity, that's it. That's why he said, there was no mighty one formed before him, neither will there be after him. I am the beginning and the end. I am the first and the last. I am Allah through thou. I am the 22 entities, the 22 powers that brings everything else into existence. So the only thing that Yah, the Father, created was this word. And through the word, everything else was created. Okay? Let's move on. Now, as we know it, you have Yahweh. But when the word takes on flesh, it also takes on another name. Yahushua. Okay? Now, let's go to Matthew chapter 2. We're going to tie some things in. Now, when Yahushua was born in Bethlehem, run a reference, do a research on Bethlehem according to the Old Testament scriptures. Okay? Now when Yahushua was born in Bethlehem of Yehudah in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east, particularly from the east. Now, for everybody who's following along, I'm going to give you some things to research on your own. Make a comparison with Genesis chapter 25 and verse 6. Okay? There came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, where is he that is born King of the Yahudim, King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and are come to worship him. Now let's move down to verse 9 in chapter 2 of Matthew. When they had heard the king, they departed. And lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. Now here's a question. Did this natural occurrence happen as a result or in reference to Balaam's prophecy? When he says, I see him, I beheld him, a star shall come forth from Yaakov. Think about that. Okay? Let's move on. Let's go to Luke chapter 4, beginning at verse 16.